Hello, everybody. So, sorry for missing the stream last Friday. I'm pretty sure even on like Tuesday, I was like, and I'll see everyone on Friday, even though I totally knew that I was traveling and it didn't really occur to me, didn't put two and two together. But today, what I think I want to work on is right now, you can do something like purchases one and get to the purchase page for the first purchase. And I think I have some unfinished work on my laptop that is not showing up here. Give me 1 second. I might push some work. And now I will pull it. Uh-oh. And we will trigger another CSS compile. And that's looking more like what I expect. Okay. Cool. So, what I want to work on is right now we can just go to like purchases / the purchase ID and see the receipt, right? Which is obviously not ideal because this is a super easy to guess URL. So I want to work on having some sort of like order ID or some sort of kind of hard to guess slug that we can stick in there and move to doing that. So it's a little bit less easy for people to find. So let's think about the best way to do that. I think there's two steps. One step is to work on getting the actual purchase ID or the purchase slug or whatever we want to call it to be created whenever a new purchase happens. And the other step is making it so that we can access the purchase at that specific URL. So I think what I want to do is start by driving at the URL side of it, and that'll help us drive out some database migration changes and stuff like that, and then we can look at the other side of it after that. So let's do that first. One cool thing I want to point out, Steve made these cool, this SVG background illustration for these pages with this little kite and some clouds. It's kind of cool. Just enough to make like this page feel like a little bit more, less like a modal and more like a real page. So yeah, kind of neat, kind of dig it. So let's head over to some code and think about what we want to do. First of all, let's find out if there's like a test for viewing a purchase. So there is. Perfect. So we already have a starting spot. So I think what we want to do is basically work on updating this test and make sure that we can access a purchase at a URL with some sort of slug. Okay. So right now we're using route model binding, the route helper to calculate the route, which is totally fine when we're just relying on the ID. But I think if we relied on that when using the slug, it would be kind of hiding a pretty important detail. I think most people would assume that this is just going to create the URL with the ID and stuff. But since we want to create like a new URL, something like, purchases / blah, 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 I think we want to be explicit in the test that that's the URL we want to hit and not the ID one. So let's change this GET request to something like purchases. Still don't type that right ever. And then we'll put like some test purchase key or something. The hard thing about these sometimes is trying to figure out what we want the name of this property to be. So we already have a purchase ID, right? Which is going to be like the auto incrementing ID in the database. So what we really want here is something like, a slug, or like maybe you would call it like an order number or something like that. Let's go with order number. I think that'll work. So let's do something like order number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Something like that, and then we'll save that with our factory at the same time too. So maybe we'll stick that up here. We'll say order number And we'll put in that same arbitrary string. And when we run this, we should see like a failure naturally. Okay, so general error, table purchases has no order number column. So let's go back to our create purchases table. Still can't type it. And we'll add an order number. And I think I'll make it the first field here. And it's really going to be a string. Should it be order number? I think in the past, sometimes I've called this like confirmation number. Let's call it confirmation number. I think I actually like that better. There's some confusing stuff in this app so far already that I want to fix surrounding just sort of language. Like sometimes I call something a purchase and sometimes I call it an order, depending on if you're looking at it from the back end or the front end. So that's something I want to figure out. But calling this confirmation number is a little nicer, because then if I decide to use purchase or order more consistently, like this isn't coupled to that anyway and can change. Okay, so let's run this again, comment out our change here quickly and make sure that we see that error, that we need a confirmation number column, and we do. So let's add a confirmation number column here. And run this, and what error do we get now? No query results. So let's look at the purchases controller. So we're doing a find or fail for the ID here. So let's go to our routes file. And you know what? I wish Command R in Sublime worked in your routes file, because I hit it instinctively all the time, even though, of course, it doesn't make any sense. Okay, so that's going to be here. So here where we're doing purchases ID, I'm going to rename this to confirmation number. And even though that doesn't really make a difference, but it's more clear. And then we can update it here too. So we'll call this confirmation number. And this, of course, isn't going to be find or fail. We'll have to do where confirmation number is confirmation number, first or fail. I think like order slug is not a terrible name, but this is going to probably show up on their receipt ultimately too at the end of the day. So I want it to be something that makes sense to them. If they were to email me and I had to say, hey, what was your order number? If I say, what's your order slug? Then they might be confused. I've been working on KiteTail sort of off and on since probably not really seriously until like April. And I'm still not working on it very much. My focus is still on my testing course that I'm working on, finishing the rest of the content for that. So I do these streams twice a week just so I can get it out of my system and work on it for a couple of hours every week. But that's kind of as much as I do on it, only a few hours a week right now. But we'll get more serious about it when I finish the other things that I need to finish first to be a responsible human. So where were we? Okay, so that's passing now, so that's cool. So one thing that'd be nice is maybe if we could like refactor this. So instead of doing like where confirmation number, blah, 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 first or fail, let's add a method to the purchase model. I'll have to stick that up at the top here. And we'll call this find by confirmation number. And this will basically just be this same thing right here. So we'll just return that purchase. And before we go make any other changes, just run the test, see they're still passing. And here we can just say purchase. Get rid of some extra crap. Find by confirmation number. And we're still green. Good. Yeah, I haven't got into the part where we're going to actually create the order number yet. So we'll look at that pretty soon. Probably next, actually. So one thing that we're kind of missing here is what should happen if you try to view a purchase that doesn't exist. So I'm going to go out of my way to break that. So let's change this to first, so it'll return null. And we'll write a test for it to kind of prove that we need to use first or fail. So viewing a purchase that does not exist returns a 404. So we can get rid of all this crap, and we can just say purchases does not exist, 1, 2, 3, 4. And I think I'm actually going to change these assertions too while we're up here, but let's say that we expect assert status 404. And that'll kind of be enough. And I think this is going to do something weird. So call the member function product theme color on null. So that's not ideal. So if we go back here, we can go back to first or fail. And that should trigger something different. So now we get a model not found exception bubbling all the way up. And that's because in my base test case file, I have exception handling disabled by default. So we're going to want to use with exception handling to turn exception handling back on so that Laravel can convert this exception into a 404. So let's do with exception handling get. And now we're back to green. Cool. So you might have noticed a couple streams ago, I was showing an approach that I kind of have been preferring a lot lately for making assertions when I do like a GET request style thing, where instead of verifying that I'm seeing some crap on the page, I'm just kind of making assertions about like the actual data that was passed to the view. So let's change this to work that way. So if you look in my test case, I macro in some stuff into the test response. This lets me get a specific key that was passed through. So I think the easiest way to do this is to just do something like this, assert true, response data purchase is purchase. Let's just run that. Okay, so that's still true. If we delete all that, we still get green. And the other nice thing, let's go to the purchases show view. I'm fairly confident that if we made some mistake here, we would still get an error. So say we decided to change like purchase to order or something, which is very likely to be a refactoring that I might make. And we went back here and ran this test again. Now we're going to get an error, undefined variable order, right? So our tests are still going to fail without ever actually making any assertions about the actual HTML. So, haven't got the newsletter. I got the newsletter. Weird. I will check in my email provider if you guys can send me the email addresses that you used and see what it says. But anyways, yeah, so back to this. I feel pretty confident that just this single assertion is going to be enough to catch most of the errors that I'm going to make in the view. Like if we wanted to say, purchase name instead of purchase product name, we're still going to get an error. So that's pretty cool. So I feel pretty good about that. And if we were to go ahead and return like the wrong purchase or pass the wrong purchase to the view. So like say we made like purchase 2 for whatever reason. And this had like a different confirmation number, like something else. Then we'd want to make sure that we got purchase 1, not purchase 2. And if I was to create purchase 2 first, which is confusing, but not what we're going to do, then there's potential that if I had implemented this in a stupid way, like purchase first or fail, If we didn't have this here, this still passes, which is bad. But if we do add this one, it fails. So we could, if we wanted to, have multiple purchases exist, and just so we really feel confident that it's giving us back the right one. But I don't think that's a mistake that I'm likely to make, so I'm not going to worry about it. Okay, so everything seems to be working. What's the whole suite look like? Oh, we got some errors. Oh, we got a lot of errors. Let's find out what's happening here. Oh, purchase confirmation number is not, it's not being set in a bunch of other places that rely on creating purchases. So, easiest way to fix that is to go to our model factory and make sure that anytime we create a purchase, we give it a confirmation number. Let's just say like sample confirmation number 1, 2, 3, 4, something like that. Go back and run our tests again. And we still got a couple errors. So what are they this time? Let's make this a little bit bigger. And actually, let's go to a new tab. Okay, 4 errors. What are we getting? Integrity constraint, purchases, confirmation number. Oh, so of course, the code that's actually creating new purchases is failing now, right? So I think this is all going to be in purchasing products test. So let's go to the purchasing products test and run just this one file. Okay, so we're getting errors because whenever someone tries to create a purchase, there's this field that needs to be filled out now, and it's not getting filled out. So the trick that I usually use to get around this in these cases, if you're trying to do like really purist TDD, where you don't want to be like sitting in a red state necessarily while you're doing like refactorings and stuff. So what you could do is go and make this column nullable temporarily, just so we can feel like, okay, the stuff that we're working on is working, and the rest of the code is still, technically working based on what we've described as the desired behavior in our tests. So the next step is to update our tests to make sure that a confirmation number is being created for our products or for our purchases. And then once we know that that's done, as part of a refactoring step, we can get rid of that nullable constraint. So let's think about how we want to do that. So if we go down to purchasing a product with no sales tax, which is kind of the one I always start with, this is a beast of a test, but I'm okay with it because it gives me a lot of freedom to refactor the system. And I still don't really feel like things are stable enough to start pushing some of these things down to unit tests yet. So we make a request to do a purchase. We verify a bunch of stuff about the purchase. We verify that it was fulfilled. And then we also make some verifications about the response that came back, that the credit card got charged, and that the webhook was dispatched. So I'm actually seeing something that I like here in terms of like a refactoring potential in this test. An idea that I had for some of this code was something I was trying to sort of having a hard time with was I complete the checkout and then I try to fulfill the purchase right away. And I think I actually want to make this more of like an event-based thing, because this response actually doesn't depend in any way on whether or not the purchase was successfully fulfilled. If fulfillment fails, we still return the exact same thing. It's just the template is going to work a little bit differently. So I think I would like this to sort of happen not asynchronously, because I would like it to happen synchronously, but I'd like it to happen outside of the flow of this stuff and just happen as an event, because it really doesn't affect what we do in this kind of code path. So I'm not going to do that right now, but I'm interested in that because it means that this assertion about making sure that a fulfillment attempt happened and this assertion about making sure that the webhook was dispatched, I I think I'm going to be able to delete those assertions in this test and replace it instead with an assertion that the event was fired, and then write some other tests that prove that when that event gets fired, we attempt to fulfill a purchase whenever the purchase has actually succeeded. So that's a nice thing to have discovered. But anyways, what we want to do here now is make sure that somehow whenever the purchase happens, that the confirmation number is equal to something that we expect it to be equal to. I don't really like hooking into eloquent events for like major important domain logic sort of things. I'd rather at worst listen for an eloquent event and then fire my own event. But yeah, okay, so what would the confirmation number be, right? We have no way to sort of like control it yet because we're going to need someone to do it. So instead, let's imagine that we could somehow get a specific confirmation number we want, like order confirmation 1, 2, 3, 4, something like that. And then if we run this, we get a test that we got null, but we were expecting order confirmation 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're going to have to think about like how are we going to create this order confirmation number. If we look at the product checkouts controller, I think like the most logical place for this to happen is sort of in the checkout complete step. So if we look at like the checkout class and we look at the complete method, here we go ahead and create a purchase here. And we could use events to create this confirmation number, but I am not going to bother with that because the only way that would actually be of any benefit is if purchases were somehow getting created in bunches of places in the system. And I kind of think of that as a smell almost. There's only one place in the whole app where a purchase is ever going to be created, and that's here. Like I'm never going to go purchase create anywhere else ever for any reason. The only time and the only way a purchase should be possible to be created is by completing a checkout. So rather than rely on events and sort of hide things in a sort of implicit, hard to know about way, I'm just... is the stream dead? Are we back? Let me know if we're back. Seems like it's back for me. The streaming stuff is hard. Hopefully we didn't miss anything. Anyways, what I was saying is that you could use an event to like create this order confirmation number, but because we're only ever going to create purchases right here ever, I think I would rather actually explicitly create it here. So one way to get this test to pass, right, is to do something like confirmation number. And then if we look at the test, we're trying to assert that it's going to get equal to order confirmation 1, 2, 3, 4. So we could just hard code that in here. And that would be like one kind of way of getting this passing, right? Okay, so we're passing. So what I would want to do now is think about what is a better way to do this, and how can we do it in a way that's easy to test against. So one thing that you might want to do here is do something like stir random, 32 or whatever. But if we do that, then we can't know what it is to assert against it. So we need to be able to sort of control what the return value is going to be whenever we somehow generate a order confirmation number. So I'll show you a trick that I kind of like to use. I like to create classes for this sort of thing and then treat them as fancy real-time facades so that I can replace the facade with a test double. So check this out. So say we go back to the checkout and we change this to order confirmation 1, 2, 3, 4. Up on our test where we replace the credit card gateway and the webhook dispatch with fakes, let's do order confirmation number should receive, generate, and return order confirmation 1, 2, 3, 4. And then this is not going to work yet because we don't have a class for that. But if we go up here and we say use facades app order confirmation number and move that to its rightful location. Then when we run this, we should get an error probably. Okay, so there is no app order confirmation number class. So since we want this to receive generate and return that, we want to replace it with like some sort of like fake object, right? So let's use artisan make model, even though it's not a model. What? Wrong thing. Whoopsie. Okay. Order confirmation number. Not an eloquent model, but it makes the class faster and gives us the right namespace. So when we run this now, we get a passing test, which is sort of bizarre because, you know, we're not calling this yet. So this is what we'll do. If we go back to our checkout class and make this an empty string, we should see a failure again. Okay. So now we can call the order confirmation number and call generate. So this is going to be our fancy facade, right? So we'll import the facade version. So it comes in as a facade. And now we have like a nice static access to like an order confirmation number generator, really. But it's generating in sort of a fancy way that lets us make it replaceable at runtime without having to create like a actual order confirmation number generator that we dependency inject and all this crap. So this is going to be totally fine for me. And I think hopefully we're green now, and we are. Now, of course, this is not perfect because we don't have a real order confirmation number generator implementation or order confirmation number generate method implementation. So we're going to have to work on that too. So before we go any further, let's run this whole thing. We get 3 errors. So I'm pretty sure that's in the 3 other methods that are successfully having products get purchased. So there's 2, and we'll just copy that assertion for now. I need to do some refactoring of these tests, but I'd rather just at least have them passing, even if I'm not stoked about them, and worry about the refactoring later. Because some of the opinions that I'm forming about sales tax, I think, are going to change. So let's see where we're at. So the other test is line 161. So this is when the webhook fails. Okay. So when the webhook fails, the purchase still happens. So let's go webhook fails. Still want to do that part. And scrolly oly woly, still want to do this part. So it's still going to be a purchase. I think next stream we'll refactor these tests. I think that'll be fun. And we're back to green. Okay, cool. So what we need to do next is test the actual order confirmation number that's actually going to generate this stuff and make it actually work. So this will be one of the first tests that goes in our unit tests folder, because most other stuff I'm just covering it with feature tests and not really stressing about it too much. And I heard that there's an artisan make test now that I haven't used. Artisan make test, cool. So what flags does this take? -- unit, nice. So we'll call this order confirmation number test unit. Okay. And I think the thing that I'm going to do with this that's sort of interesting is we're going to test it as a facade instead of testing like the actual class, because that's the only way that I'm using it. And that's kind of how it's intended to be used. So let's pull this in. And get rid of comments, because those are unnecessary. And we actually don't need these either. And let's think about the first test that we want to write. So what I like to write tests for with this sort of stuff is stuff like kind of trying to prove that order confirmation numbers are unique or like not the same, and also trying to prove that they fit some particular sort of structure. So I think, let's think. I'm trying to think like what format do we want them in. So like one way to do it is like all caps, right? Like we could have something like, alphanumeric, all capitals, which is kind of like nice and consistent-ish looking. But I know like Stripe, they have something like literally just like crazy crap like that. So I think I'm just gonna make it like alphanumeric random crap. I don't really care if there's lowercase and uppercase mixed or what it really looks like. And it kind of makes it easier to guarantee it's unique as well because the key space is bigger. So let's get rid of this and just scaffold one out the way I'd rather do it. So let's say order confirmation numbers are, how long should they be? 32 characters? 32 characters long. Sounds good. So let's say number equals order confirmation number generate. And then we'll write an assertion. This assert, is there assert, if you do assert count on a string, what does that do? Does that check the length? Whatever, let's just do assert. Assert equals 32 sterlen number. Let's just run that. So call undefined method order confirmation number generate. So since we're using this as a facade, it's actually going to be an instance method, not a static method. So we'll run the test again. And we get an error that 0 matches expected 32. So let's just return stir repeat A 32. So this is kind of like cheating it to sort of force us to write more tests to describe what this should look like. We could use a UUID, but I don't know. I think they're ugly. I don't like the dashes. Maybe a base 64 encoded UUID wouldn't bother me so much. 32 character random string is like so unlikely to ever have a collision that I'm not worried about it anyways. But we could always change that after the fact. Again, everything's going to be isolated to this one test and this one method. So we can sort of change the structure of it at any time, and none of our other tests or no other implementation is going to be coupled to it in any way. So let's write another test. And the next one I think I want to write is that order confirmation numbers are, I guess we'll say unique, even though we're not going to really prove that it's unique. But we can prove that at least generating a bunch of them doesn't generate ones that are the same ever. So let's try something like this. Here's a cool trick for this. Numbers equals collect, range 1 to 100. So we'll generate 100 of them. Map, function, return, order confirmation number generate. And if we dump the numbers all here, we should see that we have 100 versions of the same thing. Right? Which is grim. So we can prove that they're not the same by doing this. We can say this assert equals, check this out. Or actually, let's do assert count. Assert count 100 numbers unique. So we'll use the collection unique method to to only return all the unique order confirmation numbers, and we'll make sure that there's still 100 of them. So if this comes back as anything less than 100, that means there's a duplicate. Failed asserting that 1 matches expected size 100. Cool. So now I feel pretty confident that I can just like go here and just return stir random with 32 and run this in a screen. Cool. So let's do one more thing, which is run the whole test suite for a second here, make sure we hadn't goofed anything up. And then see about testing this out in the browser. It's always good to just kind of know for sure that it works. So if we go to KiteTail, then we should be able to, let's refresh the whole database actually. So actually, so we have a test that kind of proves these are unique, but we don't have a test that proves we get an error if we try to generate 2 confirmation numbers that are unique. I'm trying to decide if I care to write a test that forces us to add a unique constraint to this column. I don't think I care. I think I'll kind of pretend that's a refactoring step. So instead of nullable, let's say this should be unique, and run the tests again. Oh, we got some errors. So I think this is because of our model factory. So since we return like the exact same thing every time, it's gonna fail. So I guess we can use faker for that. So let's find like a faker thing. Actually, I'm not even gonna do that. Let's just return stir random 32. Because again, like the odds of like it's gonna pass every time now. Okay, cool. Okay, so let's think about what we need to do to demo it in the browser and see what we get. So it's always kind of sophisticated to get this working because I think we need checkouts, right? Why does it ask me to log in when I view a page that doesn't require being logged in? Some weird session thing. So let's see where this is pointed. So products 1 is pointed at KiteHook API hooks. Now, one thing I don't know for sure is if the KiteHook little demo repo that I have set up here is still kind of going to work properly. Seems like it will. Cool. So let's just try and purchase it. And we'll keep that there. Why not? Add example thought. Actually, you know what? Let's not, because it's probably using mail trap, and probably my credentials have rolled since I last used it. Let's put in some junk here. Cool. And fingers crossed. Something went wrong. Oh no. This is a problem with testing when it doesn't always work. So I wonder what that could be. I wonder why something would go wrong. I wonder if I need to switch Stripe credentials or something like that. Let's look at the product checkouts controller and try and find out. So let's first of all find out where this string even appears. Okay, so a Stripe base error is happening. So let's go and just dump this exception. And this will be kind of clunky to do. I'm sure this is a configuration problem more than a code problem, but we can't know that for sure. Oh man, what is going on here? I think this is because of the DD. Urgh. Okay. Because this is happening in an AJAX request, that's going to be screwed up. So let's go to the checkout form and get rid of the code that does the redirect whenever the purchase is complete. And then maybe we'll actually be able to see what happened. Glad we decided to check it in the browser. Okay, so we get a 200 back, but really it's not going to be a real 200. It's going to be a disaster. The destination param must be a connected account. All right, that's what I thought. Okay, so the problem is a configuration problem. I've rolled some Stripe keys, and I must not have updated them on this machine yet. Some of my test stuff. So because it's not going to be beneficial for me to do that on screen and then have to roll them again and then forget to fix it, I will do that off screen. But aside from that, I think actually, you know what? I know of a way that we can do it. I think we can get it. We can get past that. I have a kind of a silly, unfinished UI thing redirecting us to a weird place. It used to be here, but now I think if we go to account, we could go connect with Stripe. And yeah, okay, whatever. We'll connect with Stripe. And we'll go in here and we'll just connect it to Tweeter is the one that I always end up using, just a garbage test Stripe account. Okay, so that's connected twice. Whatever. So we'll just say, okay, it's this one. I think, yeah, user ID 2, which is weird, but it's a Stripe account 4. So here we'll say, where do I do that account connected stuff? So this should be, what am I missing here? How does the product have a Stripe account? Doesn't. Man, that's scary. What have I done? What have I done? Let's look and see how this code works. So what happens when we try to complete the checkout? Where does it try to do it? So this destination account, which is retrieved from this product Stripe account. And if we look at the product's Stripe account, it gets the user's Stripe account. And the user's Stripe account is, it has many relationships. So it just gets the first one for that user. So let's delete this one. So this is the one that we just added. Test from Laravel's user ID 2, that's fine. And cool. All right, so let's go back to the checkouts. And pray that that will be enough to solve our problem, as long as that is the only Stripe account for user 2. And it seems like it is. Cool. So something weird happened. I think when we ran the migrate fresh stuff, because it's weird that there's 2 versions of me. I don't know. Something funky's going on here. And that there's no products belonging to user 1. But yeah, it's fine. We'll figure it out. Let's go and run this again. And cross our fingers. And if it didn't work, then I'll be very embarrassed. But that's what happens when you live stream Okay, interesting. So here we redirected to the wrong thing. Our tests passed because our tests are saying that we're supposed to redirect there. So we can fix that too. But you can see that we did get a purchase with a confirmation number. So that's fine. So when we look at the product checkouts controller, purchasing products test, and we look at purchasing a product with no sales tax, I think we have a test for the response here. That says the link is the purchases show link. So that's kind of weird to me that it's because like route model binding is going to automatically look for that, right? So let's change this to URL purchases / the confirmation number, which I think we actually have here, so we can just paste that in. And now this will actually fail, I think. Okay, so we returned the wrong thing. So that's good that we know that now. So here where we return the purchase, I think we have to go look at the purchase to array. And instead of returning this route, we'll hard code, not hard code, but we'll put this one in there for now. So it's going to be that dot this confirmation number. And I hate doing things that way, so we'll use double quotes and interpolate it. What am I doing? And then run this again and see if that test passes now. Okay, and it does. So let's go back to, or we'll go to the webhook fails one. And we do want that link in there. So let's just run that one. Syntax error. Oh, comma. Passing, okay. Ontario sales tax. Replace that with that. Okay. And BC sales tax. Cool. So probably it's hard to say if I want to use route model binding and do this that way, because I need two versions of this URL, if that makes sense. I need one on the back end where using the ID is fine, and then one on the front end where I want to use the confirmation number. And there's this like URL routable interface where you have this get route key method. And if you look at Eloquent model, there's a get route key that just returns the ID. But you can only have one of these. So I can't have it work with the confirmation number and the ID unless I come up with some sort of clever way to do it. I mean, I guess I could still use like the route helper thing. I would just have to pass through this confirmation number instead. Maybe I'll do that. Let's see. If we go to Route Web, then here where we pass through the confirmation number, we call it purchases show. So let's just be explicit about it then, maybe. So if we say route, oh man, fat fingers today. Purchases.show. And then instead of passing through the whole model, I think we can pass through this confirmation number actually. And that'll still work. So let's just see. Maybe that's like a good middle ground. Oh, wrong file. Yeah, okay. I think that's a reasonable way to do it. So we still have like nice named routes instead of like the hard-coded stuff. Had sort of a brain fart there. It's so obvious in hindsight. But then in our tests, We could do the same thing, but I'm just not as worried about it. So we could go back and switch all those, but that'll be boring, and it's about time to wrap up anyway, so we'll save that for another time. So that's it for today. Next time, I think we'll do some test refactoring and move some behavior out into some other places with either some events or some queues or some synchronous queues or something interesting. But yeah, thanks for checking out another stream, and I'll see everyone on Friday, hopefully. See ya, everyone.